Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a simple beaded friendship bracelet. Now this is a really delicate design and it's very easy to customize with your favorite color of seed beads. Now today I'm using 11O Miyuki seed beads, so they're nice and tiny and delicate, and I've chosen a nice little 4-color pattern here. And you can see what we're going to do here today is I'm actually going to show you how to attach those 2 strands to one jump ring so you get that nice, sleek, delicate look. So as you can see, I have some seed beads out here, and then we're going to be using 2 different sizes of jump rings. So I'm going to be using the 4mm 20 gauge of a closed jump ring, and then I have the 5mm 20 gauge of an open jump ring. I have my 2mm crimp tubes here. I have my clasp ready to go. And you can see down here that I've already pre-strung my beads because this is a really simple design. So I wanted to show you how to finish it off so that you can customize those seed beads as you like. So for the Miyuki 11O seed beads, the strand I'm using here, this is by Beadalon. It is a 19 strand, which means it's going to be really nice and strong and flexible. But down here, this is what you're going to want to look for. You're going to want to look for that 0.015 inch. And that's nice and strong, but it's also going to lay very delicate, and it's going to be easy to go through those 11O seed beads. So if you're using a larger seed bead, you can go up in size, but for the 11Os, this is the perfect wire. Okay, so what do we need for tools? So you can see that I already have my bead stoppers on my strands here. The other tools that you're going to need is a pair of cutters. I have a couple pairs of chain nose pliers, and then I have my 4-in-1 Xuron crimping pliers. Okay, so I'm going to start over here by taking off one, let me slide that to the side there, by taking off one of my bead stoppers. Now these are little coils, so you just sort of bend them in, and it helps to keep your beads in place. So once we're ready to go and we've finished our pattern, what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your crimp tubes and go ahead and string that down and let it fall towards the bottom there. And then we need one of our 4mm 20 gauge closed jump rings. So again, just kind of slide that down there. And then I'm going to curve that wire and put it back through that crimp tube. Now because I'm on the beginning side, I don't need to get it right up next to those beads. You'll need to do that on the other side, but for this one I just really want to show you guys what it could look like. So what you want to do is you want to give a little bit of slack, but you want to let that jump ring kind of move around a little bit. You can see how that's happening. So we have just a little loop there. We have our crimp tube. So now we're going to come in with our Xuron 4-in-1 crimping pliers. And if you look at the pliers here, you have that little notch at the very back end of the pliers towards the fulcrum. You have that very it almost looks like a V shape. So when we crimp it, it's going to crimp to a V. And then we're going to use that next shape there to kind of fold it over. So let's go ahead and we're going to come in and go ahead and lay your crimp into that little V, make it secure, and then press down, and you can see it form that little V shape. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to rotate that little V 90 degrees into that next notch there, just like so, and I'm going to crimp it again. And that, in essence, folds it over. So you have a little fold on one side and a little notch on the other there. So that is one of our crimps. And now you can actually take this wire and go back through just a couple of beads and kind of scooch that up to give it a nice little finished look. And here's where I suggest coming in and trimming that wire. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to slide all those beads down. There we go. Make sure we hide that wire. And I'm just going to move my bead stopper down to the end there. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we have our second strand here. So what are we going to do? We're going to attach it to the very same jump ring. So again, remove your bead stopper and you can set that aside. We're going to string on our crimp tube and let that slide down. And now we're going to come in and we're going to utilize that same jump ring, go up and through and back and down. And again, we want to make sure that it is close enough to the top there where we have a little loop of wire, but we want to give it a little bit of freedom to move. And then we can kind of do the same thing. Set it in our crimping pliers, give that a nice little squeeze in the V section, rotate 90 degrees, we go, to the next section. Give it another squeeze. And if you need it to be a little tighter, you can come in with the tip of the plier and just kind of give it a little squeeze on the end. There we go. All right, and same thing, I'm just going to string it through a couple of extra beads there. Come in with my flush cutters and trim off that little tail. All right. So now all we need to do is we're just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So let me flip this around. And all you need to do is just repeat that on the other side. Here's one thing I caution you guys about. Look at what happened to my jump ring here. So as you're doing this, because you want your two strands to be even, make sure that those wires are on a single side of that jump ring, just like that. So make sure that when you're scooching them together, and you don't want to pull them too tight, you can see what sort of happens when they get a little crunched. They start to kind of wiggle like that. That's a little too tight, because don't forget, you're going to want this to bend around your wrist. So another tip is, as you're doing this second side, let me adjust that. Go ahead and make sure that they're going to curve nicely, and you can sort of set it up that way as you're doing your crimping. So let me show you how to do that. All right, so we're going to take this off, and I'm going to slide on one crimp tube, and I'm going to pick up a second jump ring here. And here's where you're going to want to go all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going back through my beads in this particular step. So this is a little bit different than the beginning. All right, here we go. Let's slide that back through. And now what I can do is I can kind of pull it from this other edge. And this is a great use of your pliers here, just because we want to make sure that we get a nice little loop there. So I'm just pulling that tight. Just a little bit further. There we go. My jump ring is still nice and loose, which is what I want. And I haven't pulled this too tight. Let's actually loosen it just a little bit. And kind of testing my bend. There we go. All right, so now I can come in with my crimping pliers, do the same thing, do my V crimp, rotate, do the second crimp, and that side is all done. So now I'm just going to trim that off. All right, so now let's do the second one really quick. Remove that bead stopper, slide on that crimp tube, go all the way down here, and do the same thing. Go back through the crimp tube and back through a couple of the adjacent beads, and then you can come out wherever is sort of comfortable there. There we go. And now it's nice and easy to just kind of come in with those pliers. And here's where you're going to want to make sure that it's on the same side as the other one. Now it can get flipped around, and we'll fix that in a second. But go ahead and scooch that guy up. There we go. A little closer to the top. All right, and I'm just going to check my bend really quick. Okay, that's good. Nice good tension, not too much. And then come in with our crimping pliers. Crimp, rotate, crimp. All right, and then we're going to come in with our cutters. All right, so this is what we should have so far. We kind of have this big loop of our jump rings here. So now the last thing we need to do is use a couple of these 5mm 20 gauge jump rings to attach our clasp. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take one, and I'm going to use 2 pairs of chain nose pliers, give it a little twist, add it to that closed jump ring, add on my little lobster clasp, and close that up. Okay, and then we're going to come over here, and I'm going to attach a jump ring to this side, 1 for symmetry, and 2 so that it's a nice easy clasp to attach when you get it on your wrist. So you're not searching for a tiny jump ring, you get a little bit of a bigger jump ring to work with. All right, so there is our bracelet. Now, I have a couple of extra little things here I want to show you, and that is up here. So I have some little tassels that you can add. I also brought out some little pendants there. If you want to get fancy, we have some Swarovski crystal channel charms. These are really beautiful to add. And because, like I said, this can be a little bit difficult to get onto your wrist, just sort of because it's very delicate, it's very fine. So if you're going to add charms or tassels or anything like that, what I recommend is adding them to this 5mm jump ring that is attached to the attached side of the clasp. That way it's kind of out of your way as you're trying to attach it, so you don't end up getting tassels in your way as you're trying to do that. So let's see if we can add a couple little things here. So let's just open up our little jump ring. I'm gonna take my tassel and I'm gonna attach it to my bracelet right there. Now, you know what? I think I'm gonna attach something else. I think I'm gonna add a little channel charm there as well. So let's make it a little fancy, a little sparkle. There we go. So we can add 2 on the same jump ring, and then it just adds a little bit of something there, especially if you're going to take these and use them as stacking bracelets. So you can just add a little something to the back, and these are great little friendship style bracelets. You can also, because of the seed beads, make Morse code style bracelets, and then just choose your favorite charms. You can choose something really colorful. You can choose something very simple and silver. So there's just a lot of options to play with when you're making these wonderful little bracelets. So all of the supplies and everything you've seen here you can get over at Beadaholique.com, and if you're curious about the exact color pattern, you'll be able to see that in our full tutorial at Beadaholique.com.